Hi, Carrie.
Good morning. How you
Uh,
doing? I'm getting excited to see you
I
soon.
that was what I was going to ask you. Are you ready for us?
Yes, I am.
The Angers are taking a road trip. We are going to stay with Carrie and Ken in Park City. It is the beginning of one boy's spring break and the end of another's. Unfortunately, Avery won't be with us. We will definitely miss her, but getting ready.
Packing it up.
Oh,
Packing it up. Well, we got a great snowfall yesterday, so should be good.
yeah.
Skiing should be good.
Packing for ski trips, not fun. A
No,
lot of stuff.
no.
So, spring break though.
Yeah, let's talk. Let's talk spring break. And we're talking about spring break for your young adults.
Mm.
Is
It's
it an exciting time or is it a anxious, nerve-wracking time for parents?
yes.
Yes, yes,
Yes,
and
yes
yes.
is yeah, for sure. When I was in high school, our senior spring break trip was now I was in New York. We took a bus to Disney World. So we went to Disney, we went to SeaWorld, and it was so much fun. Now we have seniors getting on planes, going to the Bahamas, going out of the country,
Mhm,
and we know what goes on over there. We know they're probably not in a situation where they're making the smartest choices, but
mhm.
it's nerve-wracking.
It is.
It
It is
is
because even when you travel as a family out of the country, it's nerve-wracking and you consider safety issues when you decide where you're taking your family. So
yes.
then add in allowing your 19-year-old to go to a foreign country probably they've never been to before.
Yeah.
And as we all know, like frontal lobes are not fully formed. So, yes, there's lots of good that can happen, but there's just as many bad things and bad decision making that can happen.
Let's just look at what's going on in the news. That poor
The poor
20-year-old
family.
girl from Pittsburgh University who is missing in Punta Cana. Like,
Ugh,
what
what
happened?
the worst nightmare.
We're
So,
it's like Natalie Holloway all over again. Remember
yeah,
when she went missing in Aruba?
yeah,
I mean,
I don't
first of
know. I
all,
just, I,
her friends where'd her friends go?
and why didn't she have her phone or her wallet? Like,
Well, like we've discussed earlier, the only what do you why do you give your phone away unless you're going in the water
right.
in the middle of the night in the pitch black? First of all I would be thinking is sharks. I would be petrified.
Yeah,
But it's so much more than that. There's that
there's
poor
so much.
family.
So much. But let's talk about that. So, your child, your college age student, doesn't matter if it's a son or daughter, calls you and says, I'm asking you, Jessica, here,
Yeah, sure.
Mom, I want to go on spring break to Mexico. What's your first, or here's the
Honestly, my
thing,
first
are they
reaction
actually
is,
asking you? Or are they telling you, Mom, I'm going?
um, me specifically, the conversations are, "Have you made any plans for spring break?" "Yes, we're doing this, we're doing that." So, Avery really never gave me a lot of anxiety centered around spring break. They would rent, like, an Airbnb in Florida, and for Avery, it was more like, "Oh, the girls aren't getting along," or it was more social stuff, like, I and give me the social stuff over drinking and worrying about where they are,
Mhm.
you know
Right, safety, real safety
right,
issues,
it's
yeah.
safety issues, 100%. Um, Cody went to Bimini last spring break,
Okay,
and
and how did you feel about that? Like,
it was
was your initial thought, like, "Sure you can go,"
no,
or
my initial thought
let me
my
let me
thoughts or what I said, like, my initial thoughts were like, "Oh, pit in my stomach," like, I don't wanna be worrying about where he is, what he's doing, but It felt like a rite of passage for some of these college age kids to be doing these traveling trips. And it's traveling and it's being independent and it's, spreading your wings, but it's also, do they have the capacity to make good choices under
Yeah.
in these situations? They're going to a foreign country, and it's scary. As a mom, 100% scary. Scary is the best way to describe it for me.
Now, did you feel better about the fact that he was going in a group and it wasn't obviously a university function, but there were
Yeah,
lots of
yeah,
groups
so
from his school, his college going. So, like, did that make you feel a little, like, safer?
I don't know about
Or
safer, but
okay,
maybe a slight more security in knowing that there's a group going.
okay. Did you talk to any other parents
Yeah, definitely
that
was
were
still.
sending their kids?
Yes, and, yes, we did have conversations about it. What was on the island? What would they be doing? Where would they be staying? Stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You have to trust that your kid is going to make good decisions.
Right. So, that's a good point, but what happens if you obviously trust your son?
Yes.
What happens with these families or parents who don't have that trust yet with their child? Should they make a different decision? Like, should they say,
Well, listen,
"No, no,
should
you cannot go"?
should they and will they is a complete are two
Right.
different things. I mean, you have the parents who are like, "Oh, sure, go, go," who aren't even thinking about it. "Oh, everybody's doing it, so
Yeah.
yeah, you can go."
Yes. Right. Because you don't want your child to be the one left behind, like, "Oh, my mom and dad said no, I
Right.
can't go." Right? You don't want them to be left out because now everything's on social media, they're gonna see everything. So that definitely plays a part in a parent's decision making.
So we
I
were
want
those
my kid
parents?
to be part of it and experience it and have fun because either I did that when I was in college or I didn't get the chance to do it in college, so I want that for
Right,
my
and we were
child.
those parents in high school. We said no to the senior trip. I guess they were going to the Bahamas, and Cody's group of friends, we all said no. It was around AP exams. It just didn't make sense, the timing of when they were going. Not so much as I don't trust you, but it just didn't feel like the best time for them to be taking this trip. So a bunch of Cody's friends got together and there was one mom who kind of spearheaded just a local like Fort Lauderdale hotel
Mhm.
a weekend away after graduation that they did. And they had fun. Was it the same as the Bahamas? I'm sure those kids will tell you no, it definitely would have been more fun to go to the Bahamas rather than
Yeah.
go to Fort Lauderdale for the weekend. Um, do I think these kids missed out on anything? Was it a life-changing event that they didn't get to go to the Bahamas? No,
No.
I
Yeah.
truly don't believe that it was. Um, and I will tell you this spring break, Cody went with a bunch of friends, all only guys. He had friends that were going to Punta Cana, he had friends that were going to Puerto Rico. He decided to go with a group of friends. They rented a lake house in South Carolina, and it was just a guys' weekend, and he said it was the best trip that he's had. Like,
That's great.
they watched basketball, they barbecued, they swam, they fished, they kayaked, and he said it was an absolutely great weekend. It was definitely, for me, a a more relaxing trip for him to be on
Yeah.
than when he went to the Bahamas, and I'm wondering where he is, and, there were so
Yeah.
many other
Because
variables to
here's
think
the
about.
reality, like, if they're in college already and they are choosing, to party and go out and socialize at bars and fraternities and so forth, going somewhere on a trip in a foreign country and doing the same thing, right? Already doing it. I really think parents, should think about like this is not like a trip of a lifetime. Like this is what they're doing on the regular. So if you really don't trust what your child's decision making or you're overwhelmed with the safety of where they're going, it is okay. Yes, it's hard. It's really hard to say no
But it's
when
okay to
other
say no.
parents don't, but it is okay. Like,
Yes.
yeah, Ryan went his junior year of college during spring break to visit a friend who was studying abroad in Barcelona.
Okay.
So it was him and one other friend, and they had already traveled together away to the Bahamas with the friend's mom. So I knew they were already good traveling together. And Ryan had already been out of the country, and he's a fairly good navigator
Okay.
of maps and safety and
Just
logistics
overall
and stuff.
directions and
So I did trust him. He was staying with a friend, and then they were traveling to go stay at an Airbnb. They had a great time. There was a moment of anxiety where when they arrived to, was it Madrid? It was either Madrid or Seville. I don't even remember at this point, but
okay.
they got the Uber driver can only take them so far because there was a strike going on. And so he couldn't drive all the way. And he called me saying, I can't figure out how to get from where the Uber driver dropped us off to the Airbnb. But I had to help out I had to log in for him through my laptop,
Right.
through his account that way and communicate with the guy. But he kinda knew when he called me, "Need your help with this."
Right.
And so it wasn't a full-on panic, but of course, at that moment, please make sure, when you do arrive there and you get to the property and you're with the man, that you let me know as soon as possible because here they are with luggage walking through. They
Right.
basically just said they put their heads down and just rolled their suitcases trying to get through the crowd. So, they made it, but yeah, there was that moment. Thankfully, called to say like, "Okay, I need help. Could you help me with this?" Rather than
You
just
to ask.
be in a panic. Yeah.
And I think as the kids get older and they're at stages where they're traveling, whether it's with a group, whether it even solo travels, I think that's the key there. Having going through the steps with them of what to do in certain scenarios, and knowing that they can call you if they need to. I mean, that's not always an option.
Right.
Or I'm thinking specifically. So Avery started traveling on her own, but for conferences. And there were professors at the conferences and stuff, but for the most part, she was sleeping in a hotel room on her own. And she's pretty safety savvy. She knows like what to do when she's in a hotel room by herself, how to protect herself, being locked in the right way. So I feel like those are important conversations to have with your kids before they start to travel.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And if you have a daughter, right, I think it's even more critical to have those conversations. You always are with another girlfriend. You
Yes. And someone,
never leave anyone alone in
no,
a bathroom, out on the beach, going back to your room for something, out walking the street at night. But you never,
never,
never leave anyone. And to be
no.
honest, if it's about hooking up with someone, then I guess you just tell your friend to bring the guy back to the room where the other girls are. Like, you never let your girlfriend go off with a random guy to
In
a
another
random hotel in
country,
another.
wherever you are, it doesn't
No,
it's like
no, no,
101.
no. Like, it just makes,
That's
I mean,
friendship 101, you never
right?
leave.
As a grown ass, 55-year-old adult, like, I don't want to be alone in a foreign country.
Right.
Why would a 19 or 20-year-old?
Yeah.
No way.
Yes.
No way.
Agreed.
So, these are some of the things that we don't think about, right? When our kids are getting to this age. we want them to have these experiences because how do you learn if your parents are always with you or your parents are always controlling your every step? But
Right.
I think these are all the things that parents have to think about. Like, if you haven't taken your child on a trip, stayed in hotels or Airbnbs, and navigated logistics, or haven't been to another country, why would you say yes to when they're in college, letting them go on their own? Like, what makes anyone think that they would be able to handle it? Like,
Mm.
they're not, they're
But then
kids.
where do they start? If you didn't if you didn't or weren't able to, I mean, I feel like
I
there
think they
has
go on a trip
as a
in the
family,
United States.
right,
No, let them go somewhere that, God forbid, there was a situation,
you
you
can
could get there.
okay,
That's my
right.
feeling.
And then you also have the kids in college that are going abroad. Like, that's a
Yeah,
whole
yeah. Alright, let's talk about that. Did you go on a spring break outside of the country when you were in college?
when I was in college, no.
Me neither.
Not no, not alone. I went with a friend's family.
Okay. Nope. I went to Key West.
Mhm.
That was it. But I don't, it's
Is
like
it
everything we're doing everything faster and
everything
earlier.
faster and bigger and just more? Like, I remember when we would graduate college, the big thing to do was to take a backpacking trip across Europe.
Yeah,
Now, it's backpacking through Asia.
right.
It's
Oh, yeah,
just
they've studied
yeah, you
abroad.
just
They've
studied
already
abroad and
backpacked, for an entire semester of they every weekend. Well, why would I stay in Barcelona
right,
when I can go to Paris
right,
or
or
wherever, right? And
yep,
I guess here's the question. Who's funding all that?
well,
Who's funding all that?
I
And
think
why is that, like, what some families feel like their kids should be doing?
right.
And aren't there safety issues and all that?
I'm sure they are.
I have a friend whose daughter was in, Rome studying abroad. Her
Okay.
first weekend there got her wallet and, swiped,
Oh,
stolen.
wow. Okay. But that's a whole whole 'nother issue that we didn't even talk about,
Yeah.
pickpockets.
Yep, pickpocketing.
Does your child know what to do if they lose their passport, if they lose their license, if they lose their credit card in a foreign country? Anywhere for that matter.
Yeah. So I've always, and this is one thing that my kids know from the time we went, I think they were probably in early high school the first time we went abroad. And I make copies of the passport so that we have a paper copy and a picture on
On
our
your
phone.
phone.
And I make sure that the kids do the same.
Right.
God forbid they should lose them. Because that's the other thing, right? These kids are forgetful.
Yep.
I mean, we almost just in our last trip, Ken misplaced his own wallet in our hotel room. And then we started blaming the bellhop, like maybe he took it or it was a still we don't know how it really surfaced because we uncovered the entire place and went through every pocket of every pants and every suitcase and it was nowhere.
And
We
then
well, we called to the front desk to say, "Has anyone turned in a wallet?" So the next day, when housekeeping came in, when I came back to the room, there it was sitting on the dresser.
oh,
And
that's
I
interesting.
went down to the desk, the front desk, and I said, "Hey, I'm so thankful that someone found his wallet. Would you be able to tell me where it was? Because I'd really love to thank whoever turned it in." And she says, "Oh, I had no idea." She said, "I put out a message so we could retrace all of your steps yesterday, whether you were in the restaurant or, wherever you were in transport in one of our vehicles. But, oh, it must have been housekeeping because we didn't find it." So, and then I never saw the housekeeper to thank them or say like, "Hey, where
Did you
was
check?
it?" So,
Did you check credit cards or whatever
yes,
was in
we already had checked before we couldn't find it, we checked the credit cards and nothing had been charged, so we were like, "I feel like it has to be in this room But who knows? I don't really
Well,
know, it's a mystery.
it is possible that maybe it fell behind the dresser and they
We
just
moved
found
ev I'm telling you, we
pretty much
moved
every s
every piece of furniture, lifted up the mattresses, so I don't know. That's why I would love to know
right, what
where it fell, if it did fall somewhere.
right. But that's a
Anyway, so
great
that's right,
tip
that's the
also
point.
to take before your kids go to take pictures of the back of their credit cards, so if they do lose one, to know what numbers to call to stop them.
Yeah, yeah. So many things to consider, and I think it's okay to not initially when your child asks, say yes. Say like, "Okay, we need to think, dad and
Mhm.
I or mom and mom, like whoever,
Right.
parents, whatever, we need to really
Have a
think about
conversation about
this.
this. Yeah,
Talk through it, get more information, and really understand where's your level of trust with your child at this point in their lives.
yeah. I
And
will say that was definitely something that we had to revisit when Cody went to Bimini last year. The information kept changing. Like,
yeah,
where are you leaving from? When are you leaving? How much is it? And then every all of the information felt like it kept changing. So I that's something if he does this in the future, something that's really important is getting all of the facts up front.
would it be okay to say, until we have all of the information and all the details, we cannot give
Right.
you a yes or no
Yep.
answer?
Yeah, 100%. I think
Okay, so here's
we
another
should put
question that
together a list of tips for
yeah,
parents.
definitely. But here's the other question quickly. If they're, 19, 20, 21, they're in college, and what if the parent is not funding the vacation? Like they've saved up money,
Right?
they're paying for it on their own.
Yep.
Do the parents still have a say whether the child can go or not? What do you think?
How old is the child? In
Okay.
college?
Yeah, in college, let's say 20.
I think if you yes, until that child moves out of your house, you still have a say in what decisions they are making.
Yeah.
Why, do you
No.
disagree?
No, I agree with you. Unless like, if you're still funding college and or funding their housing at college or paying their phone bill, right? I think you then have a say. Even if they're paying for the trip themselves, I still think they're still relying on you emotionally for support as
Mhm.
a parent. And so I think you have a right to say yes or no. Now, if the child is completely doing everything on their own, right? Funding their education, paying their expenses,
Yeah,
then I think it's more of a respectful thing that they're just saying, "Hey, mom or dad, this
letting you
is what
know,
I'm doing for spring break."
right.
Now, kudos to those families and those parents that that's what their child is doing
Yeah,
because that was not is not happening in our family. We're still, right, funding college and some living expenses. So, I believe that we still should be involved in some of this decision making regarding big trips and things like that.
yes. I'm sitting here thinking and I'm remembering, Cody coming home from Bimini last year, and Lonnie wasn't home to pick him up at the ferry, and it was late, like, he was getting in at, like, midnight on the ferry from Bimini, and I was sick, and I couldn't get to the
Port
docks.
the port, yeah.
Yeah, and then, he was fine, he called an Uber, he had the Uber pick him up, and the Uber broke down on I-95. Eh, he got a flat, and his phone was about to die. His phone was at, like,
Oh, geez. Now is
2%
he by himself in the Uber or he's
by
with another
himself.
friend? Okay.
Nope, by himself. And the last contact I had with him is, "We got a flat, and my phone's about to die."
Oh,
And
geez.
that was it. And he was on
Oh,
95, which, if you don't know, is a huge highway running through, um,
Florida.
Florida. So, those were some of the scariest moments
That was
waiting
probably scarier than the entire trip at Bimini.
100%. And then I got a call that he's in a new Uber, and the new Uber had a charger for him.
Okay, oof.
But
What was the time frame? Like, how long was
It
that
really
from
was not terrible, maybe 10
okay,
minutes.
okay.
It really but it felt like a lot longer. But here's the thing, every year for the holidays, my kids get portable charger. Why do these kids not
No.
have their phone charged? I don't
Yeah.
get it. That to me is that's a
So I think
no-brainer.
there's a very like, a huge difference, like, there are some kids that are, like, so almost to the OCD
Right,
place
anal about keeping
where they need it plugged in and charged all the time,
those are
and
not my kids.
others that do not have a care in the
Nope.
world. When I get back home, I'll plug it in.
I don't
Yeah.
how do you let yourself get to 5% getting in an Uber? That's just completely irresponsible. And
Well, okay, so this is a great lesson in, like, this just shows us our children, at the young adult age, because their brains are not full, like, they
mhm,
don't have the ability to think through from step A, B, C, right? They don't have the future planning thing. Like, they can't sit there and say, "Okay, I'm getting on a ferry. My phone should be completely charged because after I'm do," like, they have no ability to do that. And it's not because he's a boy versus a girl, right? It's the age. Like, it
yeah.
just
And it's not
their
for
brains
lack
are
of telling
developed yet.
him either, because
No,
that is a
no,
constant conversation. Make
no,
sure your phone is charged, make sure your phone is charged, do you have a charger? I mean,
no,
that's
and right. So, as we come to an end on this episode, right,
oh,
it's hard. This is what a whole list of things that when you get to the age where your children are high school, college, young adult age, that we feel like it should be getting easier, and in so many ways, it's getting so much more challenging because these are really big issues, and the
yeah,
impact that they have, like this it gets back to this poor family whose daughter is still missing in Punta Cana. Like, never, I'm sure, did those parents think when she went off with
oh,
her
yeah,
girlfriends for spring break
that she
that this
wasn't
could potentially be an
right,
outcome.
that she wasn't coming home. Right,
And we don't wanna, like, parent out of fear, but I think we just really need to be parents and really consider all of these safety issues when we're saying yes and
yeah,
allowing our kids to do things independently, because in the end, sometimes it's really not even about them and their abilities or inabilities. Because for all we know, this could be she was sex trafficked
oh my
or
gosh, yes,
kidnapped,
I
or
mean,
we don't
listen,
even know. We don't know, but
we
I don't know. It's scary.
the issue you said something before about parent still needing to parent at this age, and I think the reason is because the stakes are so much higher
Yeah.
right now. You're getting into issues of safety and decision making, and, you still need to be their parent. If something doesn't feel right to you, it is okay to say, "I'm not comfortable with this."
Yep.
So, on
All
that
right.
note, we wish everyone a happy, safe
Happy and
spring
safe
break.
spring break, whatever you may do, whether you're at home just on a staycation or whether you're traveling somewhere warm or
Or cold.
skiing or going somewhere exotic. But be safe, have a great time, and thanks so much for listening.
Take care.